Hey, welcome to the Lead Up Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Harbour. It's been a while. I've been doing a lot of interviews of elite leaders lately. And so it's been a few weeks since I did a solo podcast, but I'm really excited to be here with you today and excited to have you join me and listen to the Lead Up Podcast. Today is episode 486. We're talking about the 7 pillars of the elite leader. I talk about elite leadership, what it takes to be an elite leader. I'm not talking about just average or status quo leadership, which we have a ton of that in the world today. But I know you want to be elite. I know you want to lead at that next level. And that's what the Lead Up Podcast is all about. That's the work that we do at Harbour Resources, is help you take your leadership to the next level. So we're going to talk about those 7 pillars that you need to be aware of and grow in as a leader, and where coaching can help you do that. I can honestly say I would not be standing in front of you today recording this podcast had I not invested and began investing in coaching, mentoring, and self-development when I was 23 years old. And I've been doing that ever since, over 30 years now. And I continue to invest in my own personal growth and development, just like you're doing today. It's much easier today because we can watch a YouTube video. Maybe you're watching this on YouTube, or maybe you're listening to a podcast as you walk or work out, which is what I do a lot. I'm walking, I'm in the gym, I'm listening to podcasts, constantly trying to learn, pick up a new nugget here or there. So I want to thank you. I don't like wasting your time. I want to thank you, first of all, for just making me a part of whatever your day is, and your personal growth. Most leadership, most leadership development fails not because leaders don't want to grow, but because it focuses on skills without first shaping the leader. And that's a quote that I live by. I read something recently that if you want to grow your organization by 10%, they were talking about bottom line. If you want to grow your bottom line by 10%, grow yourself. Grow yourself as a leader first. And that's what the Lead Up Podcast is all about, where we help leaders think better, lead stronger, and build what lasts. We want you to experience that 10%, 20%, 30% growth in your leadership effectiveness every day. So we're going to pull back the curtain on something that most leaders, most executives don't really fully understand until they experience it firsthand, and where executive coaching can help with that and what it actually works on. These aren't surface level tactics. They're not motivational noise. I don't even call myself a motivational speaker. When someone calls me and says, "Hey, can you come and do a motivational speech for us?" I'm like, well, I'm not really a motivational speaker. I'm an inspirational teacher. I want to inspire you to become your absolute best, to live into your full potential as a leader. But I want to teach you at the same time. I don't want to just come in and excite you and then you go back to the grind and you can't carry that excitement with you. These core leadership capacities, these core leadership capacities that separate reactive managers from elite leaders are important. They're the kind who scale themselves before they scale the team or the department or the organization. And I'm going to talk through an executive coaching framework as a starting point. And I'm just going to rename and reframe these 7 critical focus areas through our Harbour Resources elite leader model, because elite leadership is not about doing more. It's about becoming more who can carry more, who can do more with the people, with the team that you have. Jim Collins says that influence or leadership is really the ability to influence people to do something they may not want to do, but need to do, must do, in order for the team, the organization, to move forward. Before we jump into these 7 pillars, I want to encourage you to do a couple things for me. I wrote a book. I actually have written 3 books. I don't know how that's happened, but I wrote a book recently, just a couple years ago, called Quit Losing Talent, the expanded edition. So I wrote a small book called Quit Losing Talent. And then I immediately started rewriting, because the small book was just to get some quick things, ideas in leaders' hands. But then I expanded on that with a lot more research, a lot more tactics, tools, and the framework for really where my experience over the last 30 years has been helping companies attract the best talent and to activate and then keep that talent. Maybe you call it recruitment. Maybe you call it onboarding. Maybe you call it retention, but I want you as a leader to grow. And that book is a tactical framework. It's built around relational leadership, but it's a tactical framework for you. If you just implement 4 or 5 of those things, you'll be an elite leader. You'll be in the top 5% of leaders. These are things that are simple, but people don't do frequently in my experience in working with leaders, not because they don't want to, they just don't have the framework to do it. And I'm a believer that in leadership, we fall to the level of our systems and processes, not our potential. And so I want you to go get a copy of my book, Quit Losing Talent, the expanded edition. You can find it on Amazon. Shoot me an email. I'll shoot you a link directly to it if you have trouble finding it. But I'd love for you to get a copy of that book. Once you read it, leave me a review. Tell me what you think. Very practical. And I promise you, if you'll implement the 4 or 5 ideas that you find out of those 20 tactics, 4 or 5 ideas that you find in there that will really help you, it will take your team to that 10% growth that we were talking about earlier. All right, let's jump into these 7 pillars. Number 1, internal alignment. Here's what I believe. I mentioned this in kind of the intro. You cannot lead you cannot lead with clarity if you're internally fragmented. Elite leaders are not the smartest people in the room. They're the most internally aligned. So when we think about internal alignment and this pillar, it it focuses on decision-making clarity, values alignment. Values alignment is the very first chapter of my book, Quit Losing Talent. I call it target checking your values. There's emotional regulation under pressure and leading from conviction rather than reaction. Look, emotional intelligence and understanding yourself is the number one skill, competency, character trait, whatever you want to call it, however you want to frame it. I call it a competency. It's the number one. I believe there's lots of competencies and really in our leadership development, we focus on 8 key competencies in our 360 reviews and surveys that we do of leaders. But number 1 to me is emotional intelligence or emotional awareness. If you do not have that, and any leaders don't, look, it's something I still work on. I'm 50 plus years old, 56 to be exact. I'm still working on that. Emotional regulation. I'm a high D, very assertive, very driven, very impatient, and I can let my emotions get the best of me sometimes. So that's 1A. 1B is communication. Is how do we communicate in an emotionally aware way that connects and influences people? And you've got to have this internal alignment. Like you have to understand as leaders to be elite, you've got to have this internal alignment, internal understanding, this self-awareness. And what does that mean? To create clarity in your decisions, to align decisions and align people with values and where we want to go. For you to regulate your emotions. Look, I bet if I were to ask you, if I were to survey you, and I do this with a lot of leaders, how many of you wish your teams had better emotional regulation under pressure? And every hand goes up. And here's what I believe. We get what we model. As a leader, we get what we model. And then we need to be able to lead from conviction rather than reaction. Look, I believe this is maybe one of my best strengths personally is I'm a very convicted person. I have very strong value sets, very strong principles, and I lead from that place. And that gets me in trouble sometimes because I'm not as flexible maybe as people think I should be. But as a leader, we have to have very strong convictions, alignment with our values, alignment with our mission, alignment with our purpose. Because if we don't, we're going to go, we're like a ship without a rudder. We're going to go whichever way the wind blows us. And we need leaders who have strong conviction, strong values alignment today more than ever. McKinsey research shows that leaders who demonstrate strong self-awareness are 36%, write that down, 36% more effective in decision-making under complexity. If you could get 36% better, would you want to do that? Look, it begins with what we're talking about, this internal alignment, this internal understanding, self-awareness, knowing what biases and what emotions and what energy is going to get into your way of effective decision-making, especially under stress, under complexity. And look, I'm talking mostly with healthcare leaders, and healthcare is a very complex industry. If I make a decision over here, how's it going to impact the team downstream? So we need to be aware of that. Korn Ferry, which is an executive search firm, found executive derailment is far more often caused by internal blind spots than lack of competence. Like every leader out there, I just had a conversation with a couple of executive search guys yesterday. It's going to be a podcast that comes up in June. But every leader out there, we were talking about this, they have the skills. They're competent. They didn't get to that level of leadership because they weren't competent. That they couldn't manage a budget or make decisions on direction for an organization. But oftentimes their failures are caused by internal blind spots, things that are going on. And this is where I spend a ton of my time coaching people. We just completed a 360 survey with an organization, and I'm going through all those results. And I've got some leaders who have some internal blind spots, rating themselves higher than the rest of the organization and the people that are rating themselves. Some are even rating themselves lower than. So again, maybe that's a lack of confidence, or maybe it's humility. We're still doing that research. But most leadership breakdowns don't start externally. They start inside the leader. When you go to work on you, when the leader gets better, everything else gets better. Everything rises and falls on leadership. That's an old quote by John Maxwell. Everything rises and falls on leadership. It begins with the leader. When the leader gets better, I can personally say, look, I left home when I was 18 years old. I grew up in violence and dysfunction. I left home with zero understanding of how to communicate with the world, really. I had zero emotional regulation. I left with a lot of anger from that environment that I grew in. And I just wanted to get away from that environment. And I brought that into most of my relationships. And then I was leading early in life because I'm aggressive, I'm assertive, which are great strengths, but also huge weaknesses, huge blind spots if I'm not aware of those. I had to go to work on self. And I can tell you, I started out the podcast intro this way. I would not be talking to you today had I not done the hard work. And it is very hard work. It's like going to the gym and being consistent in our workouts and our exercise program. It's hard work to stay in shape. I've yo-yoed with my fitness level, right? I stay in shape for a while and then I get lazy and I get out of shape. And I'm trying to read my son and I went to Colorado here a few weeks ago and we did some hiking, and I live at 330 feet elevation, and we hiked in the mountains, the Rockies of Colorado. It like to have killed me because I've let myself get out of shape. Where just a few years, matter of fact, as I record this, 3 years ago today, I started hiking to the bottom of the Grand Canyon, and then we hiked back out 2 days later. I was in fantastic shape 3 years ago. But I didn't keep doing the work to keep myself there. It's hard work. It's hard to keep that consistency up. But what I can tell you is for 30 plus years now, I've been consistent in my personal growth, consistent in my personal development. And I see the fruit of that today in my family, number one. It starts there, my family, number one, and my relationships with my clients and customers and people that I build deep trust with in our coaching and in our development work that we do, and my team that does that. That doesn't happen without doing the internal work of growing myself first and getting better. See, between stimulus and response, there's a space. And in that space lies your power, my power, our power to choose our response. And so you may look at where you're at today and not be where you want to be, leading yourself, leading your team, where there's this space. What are you going to choose to do in that space? Are you going to choose to do what you've always done, hoping for a different result? Or are you going to choose to look in the mirror and say, what areas do I need to grow? Maybe this is one of those, that internal alignment. So a question I have for you, where are you reacting instead of choosing? That's pillar number one, internal alignment. Let's look at pillar number two, rapid adaptation. This is about moving from role to role, right? I've said this quote, you can write it down. I've said this quote 1,000 times to people. Every new level of leadership requires a new version of you. Like you, each promotion requires you to be something different. Every time you get a new responsibility, a new department, a new team, you have to become something different. You have to learn to lead differently. Maybe you went from leading yourself to leading a team of 5 people. That requires something different. Maybe you went from leading a team of 5 people to 5 departments. Guess what? You better get better. You better learn how to manage your time and connect and set clear direction for all those 5 departments. If you're not, it's like driving that car with 4 wheels and you put air in 3 of them and you let one get deflated, you know what's going to happen. It You've got to be able to adapt as a leader. Now, how do you do that? Well, you don't cling to old identities, number one. You have to shed those things quickly. I talk about myself a lot, not to impress anybody, but to impress upon you that if you hang on to the old you, like if I hang on to the old identity of what I grew up in and who I was and the things I wasn't happy about, the anger, if I hang on to that, I don't become who I am today. Now, you may not know me personally, but if you ask my friends, if you ask the people around me, they'll tell you who I am. I'm not that guy. I'm not the guy I came from that, but I am not of that today, right? This is about letting go of those old identities. I only share that to say, like, you gotta shed those layers to become something new. You got to stretch. It's like that tree growing, right? That tree, that bark has to stretch. If you go out and look at a tree closely, you see the stretch marks in that bark over time. And that's what those rings, if you cut a tree, you see those rings in the stump from where that tree, those are stretch marks. Do you have any stretch marks? Are you growing? Are you stretching yourself? Or are you still trying to be the same old person? Look, I talk with leaders every day. They hang on to leaders that were promoted into roles maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, and they're just trying to get that leader to retirement while their departments fail and there's turnover and there's like that, the turnover in a leader who is still the same, hanging on to old identities is costing the organization not thousands, but millions of dollars. And they're hanging on to that leader who's making 100,000, 120,000 a year or whatever it is. And in their ineptitude in leadership and their unwillingness to grow and become something different is costing the organization 10 times their salary. I would challenge the organization, and sometimes we got to get rid of that old identity. Doesn't mean we have to fire the leader. We just got to move that person into a role that does not have leadership responsibility. Move them into a staff role because they're killing your bottom line. So as leaders, we have to learn to let go of, and Marshall Goldsmith, who I'm a big fan of, wrote a book called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. Meaning we've got to let go of what made us successful before. Look, I like comfort. I like, being lazy. I like to hang on. Like I've worked hard to get to where I'm at today, and I'd like to just settle in. I don't stay there very long, maybe 24, 48 hours, and then I pick up a book and start reading again. I listen to another podcast, whatever it may be. We have to let go of what made us successful. We have to keep, that doesn't mean that we're not content. I'm not saying you should be unhappy. Just don't get complacent. Be content, but don't get complacent. And we have to learn the unspoken rules of new leadership levels. Like when you move from a director maybe to a VP role, there's new leadership rules at that next level. What you say, what you don't say, what you ask, what you don't ask, when to ask, when not to ask. And then you have to shift from this operator mindset to architect. You have to become an architect. You have to become a psychologist a little bit. You have to become a chameleon because you're leading different people. That's what makes elite leaders. 40% of leaders fail within their first 18 months in a new role, whether that's corporate, that's from the corporate executive board. And the number one reason is failure to adapt our leadership style. Not technical ability. You know your job. You know how to do the job. It's the failure to adapt the leadership style. So elite leaders ask early and often, What does this role require that my last one did not? What do I need to become? What do I need to learn? Who do I need to learn from? And what got you here won't get you there. That's the quote from Marshall Goldsmith, is actually a title of his book. Maybe grab that. So here's your question. What identity are you still carrying at the level you're at now that no longer serves you, that no longer needs to be a part of who you are, or at least part of where you're going? It is part of who you are, but it can't be a part of who and where you're going, who you become. That's pillar 2. Pillar 3 is this: change ownership. Leaders don't announce change, they model it. So elite leaders understand this hard truth. Culture changes when leaders change first. I was working with an executive team just recently and talking with the CEO, and he's talking a little bit about things that aren't moving the way he wants them to move. And I just said, are you being the model of that? Like, are you, leaders go first? Are you being the model of that? People will follow us if we lead the way. Now, that doesn't mean we have to stay in the ditch with people, but we do have to get in the ditch with them once in a while. Meaning we got to show them the way. We got to give them courage and confidence and hope that this is the right way. Talk is not enough. So in this pillar, we have to embody the behaviors that we're asking others for. Embody those behaviors that we're asking others for. This is change ownership. We can't just announce change, say we're going here. We're going to embody that. We have to lead through uncertainty without false certainty. Meaning you have to carry them through this uncertainty without being fake, being a fraud, or not having the belief in your own leadership. And then we have to translate strategy into lived experience. So we can talk about strategy, but we got to live the experience. We might even share stories from our past, but we've got to create this lived experience before people get confident. Before Quint Studer taught this, there's kind of 3 stages of change. There's defiance. People are going to defy change initially. And meaning they're not going to do what you ask them to do initially. Now, one of the ways to get them through that is to lock arms with them, get in the ditch with them, turn it into a lived experience. When we do it together, we move them from defiance into compliance. They see, hey, Mike's doing it, I'll do it too. So now they get compliant. Now, you're not done as a leader there, because we want to move into the 3rd stage, which is reliance. Reliance means they do it when I'm not in the room. They rely on the new change. They see how important it is. They see that it works. They understand the why behind it. They know it's important to you as a leader because you've lived it with them. You've worked them through those first 2 stages, defiance and compliance, into reliance. There's a Prosky report around change initiatives that says change initiatives are 6 times more likely to succeed, 6 times more likely to succeed when leaders actively model desired behaviors. And employees watch leaders' actions more than 3 times as closely as their words during change. I was sharing with a leader yesterday. This is old research from the 1960s. Professor out at USC, I believe is where he was. 7% of your communication are the words you use. Meaning what you say matters only 7% of the time. What you do, how you model that, your body language, your tone of voice is 93% of your communication. It's similar to this right here. It's 3 times more. Leaders' actions mean more than your words. People will go when they see your actions going that direction. Peter Drucker said the greatest danger in times of turbulence is not the turbulence. It's acting with yesterday's logic. Acting with yesterday's logic. So we got to continue to peel the layers off. We got to grow. We got to become a better communicator. All those things. We have to have this internal emotional control to get people to go with us. Here's a question for you. What are you asking for change? Where are you asking for change that you haven't fully embodied yourself? You don't believe in it yourself. Don't ask for change until you've embodied it, until you've believed it, until you know it's true. Pillar 4. Energy mastery. Look, this is important. There's a lot of talk around burnout and overwhelm today. Elite leaders do not manage time. They manage capacity. One of the biggest challenges in leaders that I work with is when they get promoted up, especially, they still try to hang on to the things they were doing while adding more responsibility to their plate as well. They failed to manage capacity. Burnout's not a badge of honor. It's a leadership liability. It's like putting your own oxygen mask on first when you're flying. If you don't do that, you can't help anyone else. So we have to work on cognitive endurance. Like that's your mental capacity, right? Your ability to think. You have to work on stress regulation. Do you exercise? Do you meditate? Listen to music? Whatever it is. You have to sustain performance rhythms, like understand your own rhythms. There's so much research out there today about the things that I'm sharing with you that it's really poor leadership if you're not taking advantage of that research and learning from it and implementing, just like your circadian rhythms, the rhythms, where do you function the best? Like I'm a morning person. And so I need to make big decisions. I need to record podcasts like this in the mornings like I am today because my energy is my ability to think quick on my feet is better in the mornings than it is in the evenings. In the afternoon, some people are better afternoon, evening people. Don't know what that is for you, but that's about sustaining performance rhythms and understanding that how to build your energy, how to build your cognitive endurance, and then using recovery as a strategic advantage. Like, how do you recover? I do a lot of work with personality assessments and DISC primarily, and I teach people, we all have a recovery model. For me, I do a lot of work. I'm talking to people all day long. Believe it or not, I'm not really a people person. Like I'm not naturally wired to be highly relational. So I use a lot of energy that's not natural energy for me. So I need to recover. And for me, that may be getting outside by myself, working in the yard. It may be going into the woods, going on. I mentioned hiking. I love to go hike, whether it's with somebody or by myself. Read a book, listen to a podcast, listen to some worship music. These are ways that I recharge and recover so that the next day I can get up and do it again. And I'm pretty active in using recovering strategically, building my endurance, regulating my stress. That's what elite leaders do. Are you doing that? Or are you just going to work at 7 o'clock every morning, working your tail off till 7 o'clock at night, burning yourself out, leaving nothing for those that are most important to you, which should be your family? Going to bed, not resting well, getting up and doing it again. That's what causes burnout. It's not too much work. It's that you're not doing the things for yourself that you need to do to regulate. Instead of going to work at 7, go to the gym. Like you're not getting paid to be there at 7 o'clock. Many of you, I'm talking to salaried people, right? You don't get paid to be there at 7. You get paid to produce results. Whether that takes you 3 hours or 30 hours, I don't know. But these are things that you've got to do as elite leaders understand and take care of themselves. Harvard Business Review found burned out leaders are 63% more likely to take sick days and 2.6 times more likely to actively seek another role. So if you're a leader of leaders, you need to know this. And one of your leadership responsibilities to make sure your leaders are taking care of themselves, building their endurance, their mental capacity, regulating their stress. Maybe get them a coach to help them understand these things and put some practices in place that will help them manage all of these things so that they don't burn out and take sick days, so that they don't actively start looking for new jobs. I'll actually love you more for it and want to stay with you. Teams mirror the leader's energy, emotionally and neurologically. So whatever if you're mirroring burnout, guess what? If you're modeling burnout, guess what's going to be reflected back to you? Your team. They're going to function. They're going to talk. Their energy is going to be the same way. You want to know what your leadership looks like? Just look at your team. They're going to model that. Here's a question. What is your current leadership pace costing you and costing others? Like, what's it costing your team? I just had this conversation with a high-level executive last week. Maybe it was this week. Unbelievable challenges going on in his life, personally. which bleeds into his professional life, and he's trying to hold it all together. And I'm not making light. He's got a lot going on. But that pace is costing him, it's costing his family, it's costing his company. And so one of the challenges is, hey, you got to have a conversation with your CEO. You got to bring your CEO into awareness of what's really going on in your life, because your CEO does not want to lose you. We create some space around that. Now, I don't know where that conversation's going, but it's one of the things that we all have to be aware of. Let's look at the fifth pillar, team multiplication. Elite leaders do not create followers. They multiply leaders. My definition of leadership is this. A leader, or the true measure of leadership, is a leader who can develop another leader, who can develop another leader. That's multiplication. Like, your true measure of leadership is not, is the budget good? I mean, yeah, you got to do that. But your true measure is when you're done. Like, I'm working with organizations right now. They're in secession hell, because they got people that are retiring, that are burned out, wanting to leave, and they got nobody to replace them. And so your job as a leader is to multiply yourself, reproduce yourself, reproduce someone better than you, as a matter of fact. Don't create followers, create more leaders, multiply yourself. So you have to move from problem solver to capacity builder. This is what elite leadership is. We get promoted because we solve problems, but we have to transition from being a problem solver to a capacity builder, where others can solve those problems themselves. Almost every leader I talk to, they just want their team to be more critical thinkers. Well, quit solving all the problems and build their capacity for them so they can solve problems on their own. We have to let go of control and move to trust. Like, you have to learn to quit controlling everything, follow the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle, if you will, 80%, give people the responsibility to get 80%, and then you check it. Trust them. See what they may be able, if you do your job well, they do it better than you. And then we have to move from always giving direction to development. I kind of liken this to my kids, right? I'm giving them direction when they're young, but when they leave my house, if I've developed them well, they follow that direction because they hear my voice in their ear, right? If I've developed them well, thank God my kids have done that. I'm not saying they're perfect. They've made mistakes. We all make mistakes, but as a leader, we have to move from always giving direction, trying to be there 24/7, to developing people so they can move without us. Like, quit putting handcuffs on your people. That's control. They can't. Have you ever tried to run with a set of handcuffs on? I've only done that once. The beating hurt. I'm just kidding. It's like handcuffing our people, right? And we have to move from control and always being there to give direction, to capacity building, to developing our people so they can do things more. Gallup says that managers account for 70% of variance in team engagement. 70%. So I can look at your engagement of your team and know where your leadership is. Just talking to a leader yesterday, he was talking about a department that's in disarray. And they had recently done a survey, and I said, I bet the engagement scores are low. And she said, no, the engagement scores are actually pretty high compared to what we're struggling, but we only had 70% of the team do the engagement survey. So there's 30% of people there that did not participate in the engagement survey. That's a sign of disengagement. So we got pretty good marks from the ones who did, but we have to factor in those who did not participate as well. That's going to bring that score down significantly, because people don't participate in engagement surveys because they don't believe it matters. They're not engaged. They don't care anymore because they're tired of talking about things that haven't been changed and developed and worked. So elite leaders ask this question: what am I hanging on to that my team needs to own? Leadership, Ken Blanchard says this: leadership is not about being indispensable. It's about making yourself progressively unnecessary. I love that quote. Progressively unnecessary. Many leaders fear that if I develop somebody, they won't need me here anymore. Look, that's a fixed mindset. And if that's your mindset, please retire. If that's your mindset, please get out of leadership. That may step on your toes, but you know what? Don't really care. If you don't feel like your number one responsibility is to develop somebody else so they could take your place, they could do your job when you're on vacation, they could take your place when you retire. You're not an elite leader. You're a manager. You're a control freak. You got to let go of that. Your number one job is to develop someone. Leave the place better than you found it. You're not going to get fired because you develop somebody else. Companies want leaders who can develop other leaders. You make yourself indispensable to the company. They may move you to another department so you can develop other people in other departments. They may move one of your leaders that you've developed to lead another department because you did such a great job, but they're not going to get rid of you if you're an elite leader and you develop other people. But if that's your mindset, like it's time for you to hang it up. That's just my belief in that. We have to be developing the next generation behind us. Pillar 6 is signal control. Everything you say and don't say is a signal. Everything you say and don't say is a signal. Communication, right? That 1B that I talked about earlier. Presence communicates before words. What do we mean by that? Your body language, your energy, like your energy enters the room before you ever say a word. What is your energy saying? What is it projecting? People are picking up on that. Silence speaks loudly. Like silence may say, well, that's okay. I'm going to avoid that. And it's okay. What we permit, we promote, right? Silence is, maybe it is okay. Silence may be saying, hey, I believe in you. Go do that. I think you should say that out loud though. If you truly believe in somebody, say, I trust you, go do it. Consistency builds credibility faster than charisma. Look, there's a lot of charismatic leaders. They have a gift. They influence people. That doesn't mean they can lead forever because charisma gets old after a while. But your consistency as a leader is going to build credibility. Those are things that you need to understand when it comes to signals. What are you projecting? What are you projecting out there? What are people experiencing? What are people feeling when you enter the room, when you communicate? What are they not hearing? What are they not experiencing? What are they not feeling from you? I read something just this morning that 75% of our employees do not feel like we care about them. They don't feel value. 76% of your employees feel like you do not care about them, like they do not matter. That's a signal that you're sending. Examine that. Maybe spend today asking your team what feeling they have about how you lead them, and get real, like let go of your pride, ask for positive feedback and fix that, whatever you get. MIT research shows that leaders who listen effectively are perceived as up to 40% more competent. Like listening, just being a better listener, you're going to be perceived, whether you are or not, you're going to at least be perceived as 40% more competent because you're hearing people out. And trust is built less through messaging and more through behavioral consistency over time. Like people learn to trust you by how you show up consistently over time. John Wooden, who I love, I don't know if you know John Wooden. If you don't, go look him up. He's deceased now, one of the greatest leaders ever from a sports perspective. He said the most powerful leadership tool you have is your own personal example. Look, I'm still working on that, trying to be better every day, be a better example every day. So your question for this pillar is, what signals are you sending unintentionally? This is awareness. This goes back to that first pillar I talked about, this internal alignment, understanding yourself. And let's wrap up with our final pillar, the systemic awareness. Systemic awareness. Elite leaders think in systems, not silos. I said earlier in this podcast that we will fall to the level of our systems. We fall to the level of our systems, not our desires, not our wants. We don't have a system in place. Look, I'm constantly working on this. What's my system? For my diet even, right? I got to have a system. Don't buy junk food. That's a part of my system. If we buy junk food, guess what? I'm going to eat it. If I have healthy food in the house, system means I'm going to put the right stuff in my body. I'm going to get a result from that. What's your systems for thinking systemically? Not in healthcare, this is so important. A lot of organizations I go to in silent, this is our department, this is my department, this is my department. We don't think about systemically how every decision I make in healthcare, especially, what is that patient going to experience from the time they drive up in the parking lot all the way through the last bill that they get? That's what we mean by thinking systemically, not in, well, I only own this part and somebody else owns that part. Elite leaders are systemic thinkers. It's about elevating and seeing beyond, elevating yourself, elevating your vision, elevating the way you communicate, elevating from your function to the entire functional organization, elevating from your area, your geography to the entire global organization, and elevating from your personal success to team success, organizational success, having a we mindset, an us mindset. And you really have to focus on like systems thinking. What's the system? What's the system to make this work so that this customer, this employee feels valued through the entire year, through the entire visit, whatever that may be, right? And this requires you as a leader, if you want to be a lead, to have cultural intelligence. How often have you walked the floors of your organization, went to different departments, sought to understand? One of the greatest principles that I learned was at 23 years old from 7 Habits of Highly Effective People book by Stephen Covey. Seek first to understand before being understood. You want to break down silos? Go to your teammates, go to your colleagues, departments. Seek to understand what they do, how they do it, why it's important, how it integrates and fits into what you do. Look for areas of opportunity to improve. And in long-term consequence awareness, meaning if I pick up one end of the stick, how does it affect the other end? That's just a simple example. But if you make a decision in your department, maybe as a CEO, I can make a decision that's right for the bottom line today, but how does it impact the entire ecosystem of the organization? We have to be aware of that. These are important pillars to understand. Systems thinking, World Economic Forum lists systems thinking as a top leadership skill for the next decade. Learn to be a systems thinker. Organizations with globally capable leaders are 35% more likely to outperform their competitors. 35%. When you start thinking globally outside of your small area of responsibility. So here's your final question. What system are you shaping, whether you intend to or not? Could it be a system of avoidance or a system of action, whether you know it or not? Look, elite leadership is not about, I've given you 7 pillars. It's not about mastering all 7 pillars at once. It's about knowing which one demands your attention right now and getting better at it. At Harbour Resources, myself, my team, we use executive coaching to help you get out of your own way, help you understand your blind spots, your limiting beliefs, helping you create an identity level leadership skill that's necessary for your success to move from where you are to that level of elite leadership. If that's something that you're interested in, or you know somebody who needs some help with executive coaching, reach out to us. You can send me an email directly, mike@harborresources.com. You can also send Clayton at harborresources.com. Just put executive coaching interest in the subject line. We'll send you a link to schedule a discovery call with us, and we'll be glad to help you. We want to help you be all you can be to be an elite leader. Where the real work begins is with you, looking in the mirror between your ears, getting committed to grow and not be the same leader tomorrow that you are today. Look, hey, thanks. This is a long podcast. A lot of good information for you today. We can help you. Go get a copy of my book. Continue to listen to Lead Up Podcast. Bring your friends. Use this as a lunch and learn. Help each other grow. Until next time, continue to lead up, lead well, lead beyond, build something that lasts. We'll see you on the next episode of the Lead Up Podcast.